Next, we're going to move on to the next segment of this podcast, and we're going to be talking about the top 5 winners and the top 5 losers. Now, I will be interchanging between each one. Now, the first winner of the 2017 NBA free agency is none other than the Golden State Warriors. Now, I did talk about them briefly when I was bringing up the free agents, but you have to admit they completely won this offseason. Not only were they able to bring back Sean Livingston, they re-signed Steph Curry to a huge deal. They brought back Sean Livingston, they brought back Iguodala, they re-signed Kevin Durant to a cheaper deal. They even got Nick Young and Omri Caspi. So not only did they bring back the same team that's already won a championship, that won 67 games last season, but they potentially got even better with the signings of Nick Young and Omri Caspi. So from that point of view, it's a no-brainer how the Golden State Warriors just won this offseason. They made all the right moves count, and yeah. And I even forgot to mention how they even got Jordan Bell in the NBA draft, who can also be a potential steal if he performs to his potential. So that's another great move from the Warriors. So I think they completely won this offseason. Next, we're going to talk about the first loser of the NBA offseason, and in my opinion, it has to go to the Indiana Pacers, man. They lost this offseason mostly because they had to give up Paul George. They were put in a very bad situation where Paul George was leaving for LA, that you had to get rid of him now, but his trade value was so low that you literally got such a bad return. You literally got Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis for Paul George. So you basically gave up Paul George for nothing, which is a big blow for this franchise that now you have to rebuild. But rebuilding from the point where they're at is very, very difficult to do. So I think they completely lost this offseason just because Paul George, you got pennies on the dollar for Paul George, your superstar. That it is what it is, man. Next, the second winner of the 2017 NBA free agency is the Houston Rockets. Why, you say? Well, first of all, the Houston Rockets were able to get Chris Paul onto their team. Now, why do I think that's a great move? I think it's a great move because you're bringing in two guys who want to win. You're bringing in Chris Paul and James Harden, putting those guys together, and you can potentially get a great offense production from these two. You're having two smart guys on the floor. It's going to be great for this team. So from that point, I like it. But on the other hand, I love how you brought Nene. They brought Nene back. Nene was a great bench guy. He's a great rotation piece. He's someone who's been playing great for the Rockets. So I think bringing him back was also a good move. You bring strengthening up the bench, and also you brought in PJ Tucker, a defensive guy, a guy who can come in and just be a defensive force to pair with Trevor Ariza and help sort of hide the defensive deficiencies of this team, which is one of their biggest weaknesses last season. So from those points, I think the Houston Rockets were a definite winner. They were able to maneuver some big time moves, make their team better, and hopefully contend for the Western Conference next season and be a better team overall. The next loser we're going to talk about is, of course, the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, first of all, the reason why I say that is because Chris Paul got traded away for, I'm not going to say nothing because they got some quality pieces back, but you traded away Chris Paul. Chris Paul left. And the fact that you didn't really get a lot for him is very, very disappointing. Along with that, I did not like how they re-signed Blake Griffin to a 5-year, $173 million deal, mostly because it puts them in a weird spot as what are you doing now? Are you rebuilding or are you contending? So now it's like, what do you do? Because this contract will be really hard to trade if you do want to rebuild and hit the reset button. So from that point of view, I don't understand what the Clippers were doing this offseason, signing Blake Griffin. I thought the best option was a sign-and trade with him and ship him off and just start refresh with the rebuild. But I guess the Clippers decided not to do that. And finally, the last reason why I did not like the Clippers offseason was because they traded for actually Danilo Gallinari, which I didn't really understand, because now you're bringing in another scorer to put into a lineup that already has Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. So I don't understand what was the reasoning behind that, because he doesn't really fit from a first glance. Gallinari doesn't fit. Now what the Clippers want to do, and also I didn't understand it from the point of view of the Nuggets, because the Nuggets just signed Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap was involved in this trade, the sign-and trade, but Gallinari could have been a better fit in Denver, so I don't understand why the Nuggets did this as well. But mostly for the Clippers, I don't understand why they would choose to go after Gallinari instead of going after maybe another free agent in like Carmelo Anthony or maybe Rudy Gay, who was also available at the time. So from those point of view, I think that the Clippers really lost this offseason. I don't think any of their moves will work out, and I think they'll eventually end up just rebuilding and getting rid of Blake Griffin and just starting from scratch. Next, we're going to talk about the third winner of this offseason, and it's none other than the Oklahoma City Thunder. First of all, the reason why I say that is because they were able to snag Paul George for literally nothing. They got rid of Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. That's it. They kept Enes Kanter, they kept Steven Adams, and they got Paul George to add on to that team. So I think that's a definite win for the Thunder. They also were able to bring in Patrick Patterson, who can be a great fit for them starting in their starting lineup. He can bring some shooting, he can bring passing, he can bring some defense onto that team, which is always great for the Thunder. And finally, they brought back Andre Roberson to a very affordable 3-year, $30 million deal, which means that they were able to get their defender back. They were able to bring back a guy who can come in and be a lockdown defender next to Paul George, which can help bolster their defense even more. So I think the Thunder really got better. They're really now in a great position. I think they had a great offseason overall. So from that point of view, they're definite winners in my books. The next loser of the 2017 NBA free agency period is the Utah Jazz. Unfortunately for them, they tried their best to get Gordan Hayward to resign, but unfortunately he did not. And by losing Gordan Hayward, this just makes this offseason a definite L for the Jazz, as now they don't know what to do. It's basically time for them to tank and sort of hope that they can get a high draft pick and start over with their young core, as now winning in the West is getting very difficult, and replicating their success from last season will be very, very difficult without Hayward and George Hill. So from those point of view, I think Jazz definitely lost this offseason. Next, we're going to talk about the next winner of the NBA offseason, and it is the Boston Celtics, but barely though. First of all, I liked how the Celtics were able to trade the number 1 overall pick. They got a guy in Jason Tatum who I feel can fit them better, can serve them well in the future, can be a great rotational piece. But I also like how they were able to sign Gordan Hayward. Why? Because they were able to get somebody. They got somebody onto their team. They got another scorer to pair with Isaiah Thomas. I think this can be a great fit for the Celtics. But the part I did not like about the Celtics was that they're going to have to give up a ton of assets to keep Hayward onto their team, and I think that will eventually hurt them. But overall, I think the moves they made were good moves. I think the Celtics could have done better and been even more of a winner. Had they not signed Hayward, I would definitely call them a loser of this offseason, but because they got Hayward, I will give them a pass, and I'll give them a slight edge into a win, as they were able to get a marquee free agent to come to Boston and to pair with Isaiah Thomas. So from that point of view, I think the Celtics definitely won this offseason. Moving on to the next loser of the NBA offseason, it will be the Atlanta Hawks for me. Now, the Atlanta Hawks, the reason why I say that is because they are in back-to-back years. They lost Al Horford for nothing, and they lost Paul Millsap for nothing. Now this team is definitely in rebuilding mode, that's for sure, because they didn't even offer Paul Millsap a contract to begin with. So from that point of view, it's for sure that this team is rebuilding. But the fact that you got literally nothing for Paul Millsap, because even the sign-in trade they did with the 3 teams, the Hawks, the Nuggets, and the Clippers, literally all the Hawks got back was Diamond Stone, who knows how good he'll be, Jamal Crawford, who they're gonna waive, and 1 first-round pick next year. So from those points of view, I think that was a terrible move for the Hawks. I don't think the Hawks got anyone back, and they traded away Dwight Howard. I think this was a definite losing trade for the Hawks. I think this was a losing offseason for them. I think definitely they did not win this offseason. Next, we're going to move on to the next winners of the offseason, and in my opinion, is going to go to the Minnesota Timberwolves. First of all, it is because they got Jimmy Butler from the Chicago Bulls for literally nothing. They were able to get rid of Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn, who both weren't being very utilized in in the system, in Tom Thibodeau's system, and they got a return of Jimmy Butler. I think that was a great move for the Bulls. I mean, for the Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves are going to greatly benefit from having a guy like Butler come in and be that veteran presence and be that sort of a leader of this young Minnesota Timberwolves team. So from that point of view, they definitely won. I also like how they were able to get rid of Ricky Rubio, who just really wasn't benefiting them. He really wasn't being a type of player who they needed to put alongside Wiggins and stuff. Wiggins and Butler and Towns. So I felt that was a great move from the Timberwolves as well. I also like the signings of Jeff Teague and Taj Gibson. I think Jeff Teague will be a great point guard to put alongside these guys because he's not a high usage player, but at the same time he's a playmaker. He'll be able to set these guys up, and occasionally he'll be able to hit the open three-pointer for these guys, so he'll be able to space the floor for these guys as well. I also like the signing of Taj Gibson because Taj Gibson will bring that veteran presence that the Timberwolves need. He's sort of like a Kevin Garnett figure who, again, as we saw what he did, the work that he did with Karl-Anthony Towns was a great benefit to the Timberwolves as KG pushed Karl-Anthony Towns to get better, and now he's one of the best players in the NBA. And I think Taj Gibson can continue being a mentor and hopefully mentor these young Timberwolves into what could be possibly their best year since this whole rebuilding phase. So from those points, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are definitely winners of this year's offseason. And the next loser, or maybe the final loser actually of this year's offseason, is the New York Knicks, in my opinion. The reason why is because the Knicks once again struck out and literally got no free agents. The only one they signed was Tim Hardaway Jr. to a 4-year, $71 million offer sheet, which, again, we don't know if the Hawks will match or not. I highly doubt they will. But if you have so much cap space, your main focus is to get talent, and you didn't. Like, this is even after Phil Jackson is gone, which I don't understand, because the whole point of this year's offseason was to help rebuild this Knicks team. And what would that involve? That would involve you making moves. That would involve you being involved in this year's offseason. But the Knicks were not, so therefore I call this another losing offseason for the Knicks, as they got no one. Literally, they literally got no one. They didn't get rid of Joakim Noah's contract. All they did was sign Tim Hardaway Jr. to another big, lengthy contract. So once again, the New York Knicks are another loser of this year's offseason. So those are my top 5 winners and top 5 losers of the NBA offseason. I do want to actually put in one honorable mention as a winner, and that will be the Denver Nuggets. The reason why I say that is because, first of all, they were able to get Paul Millsap onto their team. They got a guy who can come in and fit their young roster. They have a great chance to make the playoffs. They also were able to get Trey Lyles, who I'm a big fan of. I think can do big things in Denver. If Denver can use him correctly, I think this can be a great move for the Denver Nuggets. But I love the acquisition of Paul Millsap. I love how they were able to get him. The only thing I didn't like what the Nuggets did was give up Danilo Gallinari, because I thought pairing him and Millsap and Jokic and Murray and Moutier, I think that would have been a great team. But either way, they got rid of Gallinari. It's still a great team. I'm excited to see what the Nuggets can do. But they pushed their team to great heights where they can potentially now make it to the NBA playoffs for the first time in like 5 years. So I'm excited for the Nuggets. I think they definitely won this offseason as well. So there you have it. Those were the top 5 winners and top 5 losers of the 2017 NBA free agency. I will just recap them once again for you. First, the winners: Golden State Warriors, Houston Rockets, Oklahoma City Thunder, Boston Celtics, Minnesota Timberwolves. And I don't know if I'm missing one, but yeah, Minnesota Timberwolves, and we also added the Denver Nuggets. Yeah, I was missing one. Losers of the offseason: Indiana Pacers, Los Angeles Clippers, Utah Jazz, Atlanta Hawks, and the New York Knicks. Honestly, I felt that the winners of this offseason just definitely, all the teams just got better. All those teams really improved. But for the the losing teams, I just feel really bad. But it is what it is. They made these moves. They put this upon themselves. So we can't really complain about that.